Hey guys, how's it going? If you watched my previous video, you know that I recently bought the new 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro to use for software development, video editing, and music production. But another key reason I purchased it was the hope that I could have one powerful and versatile machine in the laptop form factor that could potentially replace all my other devices like multiple laptops and desktop for various workflows. While it hasn't fully replaced all my devices yet due to some software development dependencies not having caught up with Apple Silicon, I've already gotten rid of my desktop, which I used for video editing, as well as my older M1 MacBook Pro that I used for music production. Getting rid of the desktop alone has greatly decluttered my space. But like I just said, for now, I still need to switch between my MacBook Pro and my Surface laptop for software development. And that got me to thinking, for a lot of folks who have or are planning to switch to the new M1 MacBook Pros, this will likely be the reality. Unless you're one of the lucky few who are lucky enough to get your entire workflow fully functional on Apple Silicon, you'll either be using VMs or other devices, Windows or Linux, to get part of your work done. So today, I wanted to show you two things. First, how I set up all my devices so that switching between them feels seamless in terms of keyboard shortcuts, window management, etc. Think of this as the software point of view. And second, how I've set up my desk space over here to optimize swapping between multiple devices running on Windows and macOS. Think of this as the hardware point of view. Just a heads up though, this is not going to be a full desk space or studio tour, and it will not be a full laptop setup. My goal is to quickly show you the things that will help you stay productive as a software engineer when working on multiple devices across Windows and Mac OS. But if you want a full desk setup or a studio tour or a complete guide on how I set up my M1 Mac for software development, then let me know in the comments below and I'll work on those for a future video. Okay, one last thing before we get started. I have a keyboard to give away in this video. It's the Keychron K3 version 2. If you can focus over here, it's the 75% form factor with Keychron blue switches, so it's also got those satisfying clicky sounds. This video is not sponsored by Keychron. I bought this on my own money for this giveaway. For a chance to win, all you have to do is subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. I'll randomly pick a winner in about 2 weeks' time. All right, let's get started. So in terms of setting up your devices for software development, you need consistency across platforms, and you can achieve that with a combination of cloud profiles and specific software. Let's start off with window management. Apple fanboys will yell at me for this, but Apple's window management just sucks. Windows window management is far superior. I guess there's a reason for why it's called, well, Windows. So to make my Mac more Windows-like, I use an app called Magnet, which lets you map custom Windows orientations to your keyboard shortcuts. Since I have a 49-inch ultra-wide, I mostly want my windows split 3 ways: left, right, and center to resemble a 3-monitor setup. For this, I map shortcuts to be I, O, and P for the 33% split, I being left, O being center, and P being right. I set the left and right square brackets to be 70% split left and right respectively. I set plus for maximize and minus to minimize. And finally, I set left and right arrow keys for moving windows across desktop workspaces. Every shortcut I just mentioned is triggered when used with Control, Shift, and Alt. But because I have a 49-inch monitor, even Windows management isn't quite adequate because it's designed to split in the middle, whereas, like I said before, I need it to mostly split 3 ways. For this, I use a software called Display Fusion, where I map the exact same shortcuts to override the default Windows management shortcuts. Next up, the console, or the terminal, or the PowerShell, whatever. On my Mac, I'm not a fan of the default terminal, so I replace it with iTerm2, which is very customizable to give you a ton of information about your Git branches, command runtimes, and a lot of more information like that. Since I mostly use the command line, I want the shell to always be there, but not really take up any screen real estate. So I customize my iTerm terminal to act like a Quake style terminal. If you've never played Quake before or any game that uses Quake style engine, this basically means that you can press Ctrl+ on your keyboard and pull out the terminal, and once you're done with it, you can use the same shortcut to make it disappear. Setting iTerm up in this way with a lot of useful information is quite a few steps. So if you want to learn about that, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I can add it to the full machine setup video in the future or something like that. Or you can just Google it. To achieve the same setup on Windows, I use Console Emulator, or ConEmu for short. This isn't as customizable as iTerm 2, but it can be set up as a quick style, which lets you remain consistent across the two platforms. However, it is pretty powerful in that it can launch command line, PowerShell, Bash, all within the same window, so you can cycle between those pretty easily. To remain consistent with the Mac, you can just have it use Bash as default when it starts up. Next is a super simple one. Notepad. The reason this ancient editor exists on Windows without ever getting any updates is to be able to copy paste something into it, lose formatting, and then copy paste that out of it, right? At least that's my use case. But on the Mac, there's nothing like that by default. Text editor is super annoying and it retains the formatting. So I installed an app called, well, Notepad. And that's all. Its job is to act as a middleman to help me quickly lose formatting. There may be other tools that are better out there, but remember the goal here is to remain consistent across Windows and Mac OS. The next thing that is super useful is to have a cloud sync notebook of some sort. I use Notion for this, but you can use OneNote if you already have an Office subscription or something similar. But the idea here is to have a cloud synced repository of all your thoughts, ideas, notes, to-dos, code snippets, whatever it may be. If you can utilize something flexible like this that's synced to the cloud, it takes you even one step further to reaching platform independence. And then finally, your IDE, code editor, and development tooling. For installation of these things, I use Homebrew in Mac and Chocolatey in Windows. They're very similar and work fairly well. As far as the IDE or the code editor goes, it's really a matter of preference and somewhat depends on the stack you work with. Most modern tools come with some sort of cloud sync, so whatever you use, it would be foolish not to enable cloud sync. I personally use Visual Studio Code and enable Cloud Sync or Settings Sync via GitHub account. So no matter what machine I use, I get the exact same experience. And that's all I really need to seamlessly switch between my new M1 Max MacBook Pro and my Surface Laptop 4. Maybe sometime soon, most of my dependencies will have caught up with the Apple Silicon, and maybe I'll just be using the MacBook Pro. But until then, this allows me to be equally effective even when swapping out devices that run on different operating systems. And that concludes the software part of this video. But getting cross-platform devices to work similarly with software or just cloud profiles is only part of the experience. You need the experience to be as similar as possible, even on the hardware side of things, where all your peripherals also switch seamlessly between devices. And that's where the ideal desk setup comes into play. Okay, for the desk setup, as I mentioned earlier, I frequently swap between the M1 Max MacBook Pro and my Surface Laptop 4. So I needed a dock that worked with both of these devices. Luckily, the Hyperdrive Gen 2 12-in-1 USB-C dock works seamlessly on both and comes in at a very reasonable price compared to other docks. I have a 49-inch ultra-wide 120Hz monitor, and this thing has no issues outputting at the max refresh rate. The good thing about this dock is that it doesn't require a power brick, but that can also be a bad thing as well, because while it does have a power delivery port, it won't obviously charge the same laptop it's connected to. But you can charge your phone or watch while using it. If power delivery is important to you, they do have an 18-in-1 version that comes with a power brick. The only real gripe I have about this is that the USB-C connection cable is fixed and too short, so it kind of limits where you can place your laptop. Other than that, it's pretty great. Again, not sponsored, it's just been working great for me. The Hyperdrive is then connected to all my peripherals. Let's quickly list those out, starting with the audio. My audio interface is the Focusrite Scarlett 4i4. It has a great built-in preamp that is just amazing for the price point. If you don't record live instruments or you don't use an XLR mic, you probably don't need this. But since I do both, this works out pretty nicely, and it comes in at a very reasonable price as well. If you want to get one for yourself, you don't have to get the 4i4, which basically means 4 inputs, 4 outputs. There are cheaper ones like the Solo, which is just 1 input, 1 output, or a 2i2, which is 2 inputs and 2 outputs, obviously. But regardless of the version you pick, they all come with the same great preamp. The mic that is plugged into this is the Shure SM7B. If you know the low, bassy sound of podcasts and radios, you've heard this mic before. It's a classic mic and a staple for audio broadcasting. That being said, it's slightly pricey and probably overkill for just video conferencing. Okay, moving on to the speakers, they are Atom Audio T5V. These are studio monitors and they're special in that they have ribbon tweeters that sound incredible, especially on tracks that are predominantly acoustic guitars. And they don't cost you an arm and a leg. Okay, I'll stop talking about audio before this video turns into how I set up my M1 MacBook Pro for music production. Let's stick to software engineering. So the keyboard I use is the Keychron K2 version 2. It's got the Keychron blue switches because I like my keyboards pretty clicky. This keyboard has two features that makes it not only amazing to use across platform, but also almost unbeatable at the price point. It can connect via Bluetooth to up to 3 devices and can seamlessly switch between them with quick button macros. It's got a handy little switch to switch between Windows and Mac OS as well. That means no muscle memory confusion with Windows and command buttons, or when to use control to copy versus when to use command to copy. None of that nonsense. It takes care of everything for you so that you can focus on being productive. It even comes with keycaps for Windows and Mac, so you can use whichever you prefer. My mouse is the Logitech MX Master 3. Same deal with this device. It can connect via Bluetooth to up to 3 devices, so switching between them is pretty seamless. Moving on to my main monitor. It's the Samsung CRG9. It's a 49-inch ultra-wide 120Hz QLED monitor. It's quite pricey, but I would generally have 3 monitors in its place, so if you think about the amount of money and space it saves me, it's not too bad. I also do a lot of video editing, so I need it to be somewhat color accurate. Anyway, the monitor is placed on top of the SmartDisk 2 sit-stand desk from Autonomous. When I'm working, I tend to stand a lot more than I sit, so a sit-stand desk is critical for me. And with this MacBook Pro setup, I've reduced so much wiring that cable management on a sit-stand desk has become, well, much more manageable. Well, these are all the main peripherals connected to my DAW. I do connect other devices like Guitar FX and MIDI controllers on occasion, but for day-to-day and software development, this is all I need. And as you can see, all I need to do is unplug the USB-C cable from my MacBook Pro and plug in my Surface Laptop 4, and the whole thing just seamlessly works. Speakers, mic, keyboard, mouse, and the monitor. And that's all for the desk setup. It is simple but effective. Apologies for not having blinding amounts of RGB. I'm generally not a fan of too much color. But look, the point of this video isn't to make Mac feel like Windows or Windows feel like Mac or to choose between them. M1 Macs are impressive and it's fun to use these devices. But I'm sure the tide will turn and swing towards Intel or AMD's way in the future. That's how tech works. Same with Mac OS and Windows. There is a reason why both of them have such strong following. They're both good at what they do or at specific things they do. People keep asking me Windows or Mac, or I get frequent comments saying how I work at Microsoft and use a Mac. This is such old school thinking. You're a software engineer. Your job is to build the best products and services that you possibly can. And if you can, you should use the tools that are best for the job at hand and not what your friend's cousin thinks is cool. That being said, we're still not at 100% platform independence yet. But I hope someday we will, so that we can not only have the freedom of choice, but also freedom to pick and choose between multiple platforms and use the best that each of them have to offer. I hope this video is useful. If it was, please hit the like button. And if you enjoy software engineering and a bit of tech lifestyle content, please consider subscribing to this channel. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.